I'm going to be prepping a lamb beef burger that's going to be on a brioche bun. It's going to have a really smoky, kind of spicy harissa paste on it. There's going to be a garlic aioli on it that's going to be with parsley, so it'll be a nice kind of contrast between like green and red. So it'll be some pretty colors on the burger. We'll top it off with some microgreens just to make it look pretty and it kind of get an extra little crunch on it. And then there's going to be pickled onions, and then there's going to be some goat cheese on there. So where did I come up with this idea? As I mentioned before, there's been just meals and different recipes that I have come across in my life. My wife and I were a big foodie family, I guess. We liked a lot of different foods. We're not very picky. And one of my favorite restaurants that was out in Connecticut, in West Hartford, Connecticut, they had this lamb brunch burger on their menu, and some of the ingredients that I'm putting on this are very similar, but I'm adding a few different things just because I think it'll make the burger a lot better. And yeah, it was one of the best burgers I ever had. I love Mediterranean food. That's what this restaurant was. Just a lot of lamb and, skewers and turmeric rice and just all these really fresh dishes that Mediterranean food is really known for. So I'm recreating this burger. I've made this burger once before, but that was like 2.5, 3 years ago during COVID, when I was really starting to kind of experiment with a lot of recipes because I was working from home like a lot of people, and I had a lot of time to kind of hone in certain cooking skills and try some different things. So yeah, that's what this burger is going to be. Before I start cooking, I'm going to break down just some of the toppings and condiments that I'm putting on this burger. All right, so I'll first talk about the pickled onions. I made these about 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, so they've had some time to sit. When you go through the pickling process, at least with onions, I think pickles or cucumbers, I think they take a little bit longer. I haven't pickled cucumbers before, but everybody has their own method. Everybody has their own thoughts just about how long it actually takes. But in terms of pickling onions, I'm using red onions, and I'm also using red wine vinegar, and that's what gives it that really cool pink looking hue to it. It really only takes a few hours for the pickling to really take full effect, and you can eat them right there. But like anything with sauces, marinades, even with pickling agents, if you let them sit for a little bit, I think the flavor comes out. In terms of how long this will last in the fridge, some people say 2 weeks, some people say a month. I've heard even as long as 2 months. I think the longest that I've ever had pickled onions in my fridge was maybe about a month and a half, and I was perfectly fine. No one got sick in the house. They last a long time, and there's a decent amount of garlic cloves in here. My aunt, who's a very good, Mexican home chef, she always says how garlic acts as a preservative. Not sure how much truth there is to that, but like I said, this will last a while, and you can use this for the burger that we're making today. You can put it on tacos. You can finish it off on salads. I mean, you can really do a lot with pickled onions, and I think it's a good staple to have in your house. I got the recipe right here. I will post it in the description below. But kind of your basic pickling liquid and mixture that you're going to put, it's going to be 2 cups red wine vinegar, 2 cups water, and 1.5 cups of apple cider vinegar. You can also use white vinegar. I like apple cider vinegar better. I think it just has a better taste to it. And then 2 teaspoons of sugar. You can also use honey. Some people will just kind of get a hot spoon and maybe like that much of honey and then kind of drizzle it into the liquid. A tablespoon of some kosher salt. Doesn't have to be kosher. You can add just your regular iodized salt, like your very fine grain salt. That also would work. 2 tablespoons of black peppercorns. And then from there, the flavor profile that you want, it really can vary. That's a pretty standard pickling liquid mixture that you're going to boil, and as soon as it boils, then you're going to throw it into your mason jar. So once again, this mason jar I think is a 750 milliliter, so about 25 ounces. If you want to make more, you can get a 32 ounce mason jar. I have those laying around, but now that I'm making these videos, I went out and I purchased some. This is just the one that I found at Whole Foods. So yeah, mason jars really come in handy for a lot of things, so it's not bad to have in your house as long as you have some space for it. But in terms of the flavors that you want to add to this, so some of the things that I add are thyme. In this case, you can see the thyme kind of floating around in there. The one thing Whole Foods didn't have that day when I was shopping were like the actual thyme springs, so the full-on thyme stems that actually have all the leaves on them. That works a lot better, but in this case I just had loose thyme like in a jar, so I threw in about 2 tablespoons. I added some bay leaves. Bay leaves are pretty strong. You don't need a lot of bay leaves. You can do 1 or 2. I think I did 2 for this one. It just adds a really fresh, earthy kind of component to it, and same with the thyme. It's a very aromatic herb, and I use it a lot. I use it a lot on potatoes and things like that, just because I think it really gives it a nice smell, but it also gives it a really nice taste also. And if you want some heat in there, you can add some tree chilies, or in Spanish, Chile de Arbol. You can add that. You can add some red chili flakes. It really just depends, but think about some of the things that you want to use your pickled onions for. I think this mixture is pretty standard where I can use it for other things, but if you're trying to get the flavor profile pretty close to meals that you regularly cook, or if you're trying to keep it in a certain ballpark of flavors that you like, do some research. There's a lot of articles and a lot of examples of pickled onions. This is just what we like. So, but that's pretty standard. So now the next thing that I'm going to talk about is going to be the harissa paste. All right, so our lovely harissa paste. I just made this morning. I meant to make it last night, but I forgot a very important step, which I'll talk about, so I had to wait till this morning, but see if we can give you guys a better look. So the consistency is almost like pudding. So for those that carried snack packs with them going to school and you had pudding during your lunch, it should come out to that consistency. There might be some seeds, there might be some chunks of chili peppers that are thrown, or not thrown in there, but that don't get mixed all the way. Totally fine. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of texture, but when you blend it, you're going to do it kind of at your liking. This is just how I want it, especially because I'm going to be spreading this onto a burger patty. I kind of want it to smoothen out a little bit. I don't want it to be overly chunky because I want to be able to cover the surface of the bun, so when I bite into it, I have a uniform bite. So how to make it? There are a lot of different chilies that you can use. You can do New Mexico chilies, you can do Chipotle peppers, you can do guajillos, you can do Chile de Arbol or tree chilies. I did not have guajillos. I used them for another recipe maybe about 2 weeks ago. But so the peppers that I used were these guys. So we'll start with this one. This is a pasilla chili. It's a little sweet. It almost smells like a Mexican candy. That's how I kind of remember that smell. Almost like Lucas, like if you grew up eating Lucas. Kind of reminds me of that, like the paste that you squeezed out of the little thing. So that's a nice chili. Tree chili. This is a little small. Actually, I'll pull out another one for you. That's what they should look like. That was just a broken piece. These little things pack a punch. So I'll get into that. And then what I used for this one today also were Chipotle peppers. So it's a nice smoky, very dirty, kind of earthy smelling pepper that goes really nice. That's just the mixture that I used. The one time or the couple of times that I've made harissa paste, I think I use tree chilies and or Chile de Arbol and guajillos. I think those work really well. But this is going to be a mix because I felt like the blend of these 3 peppers gave me the best profile in terms of what I thought tasted pretty well. Now, what you're going to do is, a lot of recipes will say between like 7 and 10 chili peppers. In this case, I used about 4 tree chilies. I try to make sure that they were pretty long. 2 of the Chipotle peppers, and then 2 of the pasillas. And what you're going to do is you're going to rehydrate them, which means you're going to boil them. And as soon as they start boiling, let them sit for a few minutes. Throw them in there as is. You don't have to de-seed them or anything because you're going to take out the seeds afterwards. So you're going to boil them maybe just a few minutes, but then you're going to turn that water off. And then it's just going to sit in that liquid. And just wait for that liquid to cool. It doesn't have to be ice cold before you handle it, but make sure when you go to handle the peppers and when you're dumping out the seeds that the water's not smoldering hot so you don't hurt yourself. But the whole idea is that you want to rehydrate them so when you go to blend everything, it's just going to be a lot easier to work with. So if you leave some seeds in there, that's perfectly fine. Like I said, with the tree chilies, they are spicy. It's a very, very spicy pepper that really sneaks up on you. So I usually maybe leave the seeds in one of them and then dump out the other 3. Or, dump out 2 chilies, keep 2 of them intact. You're going to get chilies into the mix. It's because it's difficult to be so perfect. You can spend a lot of time on it, but as I mentioned in the first cooking video, I don't mind a little bit of heat, but because of the other ingredients that we're going to throw in this, it's not meant to just be like a spicy salsa. It's supposed to be more of a smoky paste, a smoky marinade. So if you get some seeds in there, it's not the end of the world. And now I'm going to show you the rest of the ingredients that go into the harissa paste. All right, so I'll do the exact measurements also in the description below, but we'll start off with tomato paste. A few tablespoons of tomato paste. Ground coriander. If you have a mortar and pestle and if you have the actual coriander seeds, you can always break them up. But I have both, but just to save time, I just put ground coriander in there. The next thing that maybe not, or it won't be so common in your pantry, but it's not difficult to find, are caraway seeds. And then you're going to have ground cumin, which I think a lot of people use cumin. Not too uncommon. And then you got roasted red peppers. You can roast your own bell peppers, or you can buy them in the jar. Once again, I'm all about saving time right now because I have a baby. So it's a little slimy. They're a little weird to work with. So once you put it into your blender, just, if you're trying to save your countertop, I wouldn't do it directly over the countertop. You could do it over the sink or just put a towel underneath just because the liquid is pretty goopy. Cayenne pepper. Don't put a lot of this because this is also a very, very hot pepper. Or a hot blend, should I say. And when it comes to your salt, you got to throw that in there. And then the last thing that you're going to add, which I believe I just threw away, but you're going to add a whole lemon. So you're going to juice a whole lemon. It'll probably be a few tablespoons worth. A little bit of acid in this is not going to hurt. So even if it's not exactly 2 tablespoons, that's perfectly fine. The lemon that I had was probably like this big. So I juiced a lot of it, but then I also added probably a little bit more peppers and I might have added a little bit more cayenne. So it'll kind of balance out. So once again, it's not the end of the world. So what you're going to do is once you boil off your peppers, you rehydrate them, take off the seeds, and then take off the stems. So like your pasilla chili here, rip this off. And this will be really, really easy to rip off once it's rehydrated. So take off the stems, don't blend that crap in there. Same with the Chipotle peppers. Some of them have a very distinct like butt or the top of the pepper, I guess, depending on how you're looking at it. And it's like really hard. It's almost like a mini tree stump. Pull that off if you can. But once again, you're going to be blending things. So if you can't get everything, it's not the end of the world. But stems like these are a lot easier. Even with like guajillo chilies, they're a very, very noticeable stem. So just rip that sucker off and it'll be a lot better. But then you're gonna blend all this. So you're gonna put it in your food processor, start blending it, create a paste. If you have a spatula or if you have a spoon, just kind of scrape off the sides just so that way when you go back to blend it, everything can stay intact and reincorporated. And then what you're gonna do is, while you are blending it, you're just going to add a little bit of olive oil, not a ton. The recipe that I have here, it's going to be calling for 2 tablespoons. So while it's blending, if you have the food processor that has the big chimney and you can open it up to dump liquid in there, do about a tablespoon while it's going nice and slow. Take it off. Let it keep blending. If you need to stop it to scrape off the sides again, please do so. Do so accordingly to how your food processor is working. And then let it go one more time and then add about another tablespoon. So, and just eyeball it. You know, look at your tablespoons, look at your teaspoons. That way, you know, just the more you get used to the measurements, the more you don't have to waste using the little spoons and everything, because your mess is just going to get a lot bigger. So it's one thing if you're baking's very much a science and you have to be very exact with it, but for sauces and things like that, you don't have to be so exact. But yeah, but the recipe I will still post to give you guys a reference, and then when you go back to cook it another day, you'll have a better feel of how much to add. You know, I eyeball a lot of things. I use my nose, I use my eyes, you know, and I taste as I go with certain things. So I don't always use a lot of measurements. I kind of grew up not cooking with them, but trying to be better at it, because for certain things it really does matter. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about before we start cooking is when it comes to seasoning a burger, and this is just a pet peeve of mine, there is nothing worse than biting into a burger that has like a good crust on it on the outside, which is what you're going for. But then when you bite into the burger and there's no seasoning at all, it drives me absolutely crazy. So today I'm going to be using ground lamb and I'm going to be using ground beef as a mixture. So I have a packet of each. Those are usually about a pound. So I'm probably just going to mix both pounds together and do it just a 1-to-1 ratio. But I'm going to season the meat before I actually form my patties, because once again, I want to bite into it and I want to be able to taste all the seasonings that I put in there. You know, in this case it's a Mediterranean burger, so I really want those ingredients that I'm putting in there to shine. I don't want to just have a charred piece of meat. Like, it's good, don't get me wrong. I love lamb, I love ground beef, but if you don't season it, then you're just doing all this for nothing. So the seasonings, once again, I will post below, but that's just my thing. So I'm going to season the meat extremely heavy in the beginning, and I'm going to mix it around and I'm going to get everything incorporated. And once I form my patty, I'm going to finish it off with salt and pepper on both sides. So, because if you've worked with a lot of meat in the past, whether you do it on a grill outside, whether you do it on the pan inside of your home, if you ever notice when you go to grill or when you go to sear something, you can have the best nonstick pan in the world and your seasoning is going to come off a little bit, which is not a problem. Like, it's not the end of the world. That's just what happens. Not everything is going to adhere to the protein, but because you're going to be losing some of that seasoning, that's why it's really important to season the meat inside before you start creating that crust on the outside. I'm going to cook this burger today at about medium well. I know a lot of people are like, how come you don't need it medium rare? I like my burger to stay intact. I don't want it to be falling apart. Like, it's not a filet mignon, it's not a ribeye, you know, it's not a New York strip. I don't need it medium rare. You can still have a juicy burger if it's medium well. That's just to my liking. because I don't know, I guess I find when I ask for a burger medium rare at a restaurant, the inside is still really cold, and I hate that. Not everybody nails the temperature on a burger for some reason, so I would rather cook it a little bit over, but then still have really good seasoning in the burger. And also, I don't need it to be just dripping juice. I hate biting into a burger, then it just pisses all over you. I don't want that. I want my burger to stay in my hand, and I want it to have some density, some integrity to the burger. You know, it shouldn't just be flopping around. I just don't want that. If you want your burger medium rare, go for it. You can cook it to whatever liking you want. But whatever you do, whatever temperature you do, let your meat come up to room temp, just like how you would any other kind of protein. And then once you season it and everything, once your patty and everything is formed, let it come up to room temp before you sear it. So that way the inside is not going to be cold and then the outside of it is going to be hot. So that way you can have a nice hot and fresh burger. So we're going to get into the cooking process now. I will stop flapping my gums here. All right. So the last and final condiment that I'm going to put on this burger is this garlic aioli, essentially. Give you guys a little sneak peek of kind of what that looks like. I don't want to spill it. I'll kind of angle this a little bit. So an aioli is pretty much egg yolk based. You can add mayonnaise to it. Like I said, I'll add the ingredients in the description below. But this one specifically, I made it into a garlic parsley aioli. You could do basil, you can do any kind of herb, really. But a garlic aioli, you see a lot in restaurants. Most people like garlic, so I think most people will do it. But basically the ingredients, it's egg yolks, about a cup of oil, maybe 2/3 of a cup of olive oil, Dijon mustard, lemon juice, and once again, you can pick whatever herb you want. And from there, if you want to kind of give it a little bit more depth of flavor, of course, you got to bring in some heat, a little bit of chili flakes, a little bit of cayenne pepper, and some salt and pepper to taste. It's real simple. So I'm not going to make a video on the aioli itself, but once you take the egg yolks into the food processor, make sure that it's nice and creamy. Like, the idea is to get it well emulsified into like this mayonnaise like paste. That's essentially what it is. It's like a mayonnaise type of paste, but it's kind of a blank canvas for a lot of different ingredients. So there's a lot of different types of aioli out there, but the base is going to be the egg yolk. So make sure you get that well pulverized, get that nice and pasty into the blender, and take your time with this. It doesn't take half an hour or anything, but you want to be able to blend everything. So you want to do things in steps. I didn't do this with the garlic today. I was going to toast it off and just saute it in the pan just to give it some caramelization. I didn't do that. I just threw it in there raw because I want the garlic to come through in this burger a little bit. So, but if you want to toast it off, you can do that if you want a sweeter aioli. But put your garlic in there, put your seasonings in there, blend that up, throw your herbs in there. In this case, I did parsley. Throw your parsley in there. And then from there, once you top off your food processor, once again in that little chimney stack of the processor where you can pour oil in, slowly pour in that oil. So like I said, it's about a cup, 2/3 to a cup, give or take. It really just depends on how much you're making. In this case, this was probably close to a cup. And yeah, just take your time with it because you really got to get those egg yolks emulsified. And once you kind of go at it for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, give it a taste. It is safe to eat. I know when I first found out what aioli was, I'm like, oh, raw egg yolks? Like, not sure about that. But I've had aioli a bunch of times and haven't died yet. So unless you're allergic to eggs, obviously don't do that. There are vegan recipes that you can do for this. This is not vegan. A lot of things I make are not necessarily vegan. And then salt, pepper to taste. If you feel like you want more lemon, give the lemon another squeeze and add it in there. If you want it spicier, add whatever spices you want. So, but in this case, because it's a garlic aioli, I don't want the garlic to get too overpowered. Because I really want a nice contrast when the burger is assembled and it's ready to eat. So, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get these burgers on the pan. I almost forgot about the aioli, but now that I have this made, this will be as part of the burger assembly, and we'll go from there. Just gave the burger a flip. Got some good color on it. I'm just going to finish it off here in the cast iron pan. Make sure your pan is fairly hot so that way you can get a nice crust. And I've already toasted up the brioche buns. So once this meat is done, we're going to go ahead and assemble. Going to start with the aioli. Pickled onions. We're going to add this nice bed of microgreens. I have a pretty generous handful on here because I want to get some nice crunch. Now I'm going to put the harissa paste on the top bun. And I'm just letting my patty rest. I want to say I did about 3-ish minutes on each side of the patty while I was searing it. So it's really important that you let the meat rest so that way the juices can get reabsorbed into the meat. And you usually want to rest it for as long as you've cooked it. That's usually a pretty standard rest period time. And once it's rested, we're going to lay this on here and then we're going to enjoy this burger. All right. After all my talking and everything, look at that. Man, I'm excited. My mouth is watering. See how it tastes. How can that be bad? Man, if you don't like lamb, I don't know what to tell you. But that's an awesome burger. As you can see, I did about medium. That's just what I like. Man, it's such a fresh but vibrant burger. And it's not traditional by any means. But man, that's good. Harissa paste is an underrated condiment for sure. And it's really versatile too. So, if you haven't had a lot of Mediterranean food, highly suggest it. Look at that goat cheese. Some of you might be asking, why didn't I use feta cheese? No particular reason. If I had to make another burger that's similar to this, you can make like a tzatziki garlic ranch kind of sauce, or just your very Mediterranean Lebanese tzatziki sauce. You could do that too, or you could make like a whipped feta to get that feta cheese in there. Goat cheese though, if you haven't had goat cheese is awesome. It's fatty, but it's like real savory, and it just has this really unique profile, taste profile. It's really, really hard to explain. But the first time I had goat cheese was on a salad. This was a few years ago when I was in Seattle. And I just thought it was really good. I just never tried it, and I wanted to be adventurous that day and tried a salad that had some goat cheese on it. Fell in love with it ever since. and it really, really pairs well with lamb. So if you don't like goat cheese, you could substitute feta cheese, no problem. I would just put it in a sauce so that way the cheese doesn't just, you know, it doesn't get all crumply and then it just falls off the burger. You want everything to stay intact. Those pickled onions, man, it really cuts through the goat cheese really well, gives it a nice balance of acidity. The patty is very well seasoned. I seasoned the shit out of this thing. But I want to taste it. I want to taste it in every bite. I don't want just the top of the burger and the bottom of the burger to have all the seasoning and then the middle gets lost. Harissa paste is dripping. You know, in the microgreens, like I said, it just makes it a little bit pretty. Gives it another little textured layer. Besides the pickled onions, that's the part that's the most crunchy. And in my humble opinion, there is no better bun for a burger than a brioche bun. You can't top it. People like pretzel buns. I find pretzel buns really slippery. But a brioche bun, whether you're making a smash burger, this type of burger, if you're making like a barbecue cheeseburger, it doesn't matter. A brioche bun really holds up to a lot of different types of hamburgers. Really important to toast the buns. I toasted it with a little bit of butter, even though brioche has a good amount of butter in it, just enough to get it toasted. You don't have to oversaturate it. But yeah, enough said, man. I'm going to enjoy this burger. Like, comment, subscribe. Tune into the podcast, Dad Life 4106 on Instagram. You can find me and my buddy Jake on Spotify talking about the dad experience. Podcast is called Dads Let's Talk About It. Like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. We're really trying to be supportive for our dads out there. I know I talked a lot in this video. There were a lot of different components that I was trying to put together, but all in all, once again, I had a lot of preparation done ahead of time. So all I had to do was focus on the burger itself. And yeah, I'm very pleased with this. It's been a long time since I made this, and I'm very much enjoying this. See you later, guys. Cheers.